Hey friends, it's Gloria and welcome back to another video. I'm going to be doing my April wrap up, all the books that I read in the month of April. I don't have too many, but I have some opinions, so let's get into the books. I'm going to start with the book that I mostly read in March for Women's History Month, but I didn't finish until a week or two into April, and that was Violeta by Isabel Allende. Now this is an author that I've been meaning to read forever. I own several of her books, and this was the group pick for Fierce Reads, which is like reading about fierce female characters. And I would say that this book does feature a fierce female character, but my enjoyment of it was fine. I gave this book 3 stars. Overall, it wasn't anything of a standout for me, but I totally understand why some people would love it. I am still interested in reading more from this author. This follows one woman's life basically from conception all the way until her death, and it spans about 100 years, and it mostly is set in Chile. It chronicles her friendships, mostly her relationships, her relationship with her lovers and her children and other people in her life that she meets along the way. I would say that the pros of this book is that you get a really good sense of the main character and the side characters as well. And I also really like that I got to learn about Chilean history. Like, I just have absolutely no idea about Latin American or South American history, so I liked that aspect of the book for sure. The main con for me was that because it follows so many years and so many like highlights of her life, or lowlights even, that it wasn't detailed enough or long enough or specific enough. I just felt like I just skimmed over, you know, this person's life, and I got to know like the main things, but that was about it. So that was my experience. Definitely would read more from this author, but not a favorite book. Next, in historical fiction, I did pick up a favorite author, and that is the newest book from Amy Harmon, The Outlaw Noble Salt. Now, I am on a mission to read all of Amy Harmon's books. I've loved so many of her historical fictions in the past. They've been some of my favorite reads of the past few years. This one, unfortunately, was also a 3-star read. Wasn't a new favorite of mine, unfortunately, because I look forward to her books every year, and I still will. She's still a favorite author, but I didn't love this new book from her as much as I usually do. I had a hard time connecting with the main characters. We basically follow a fictionalized take of Butch Cassidy's life. Butch Cassidy was a real outlaw in the American West in the early 1900s, late 1800s. An outlaw, I think back in the day, was just like people who robbed trains and banks and, you know, stole money and like were cowboys basically. Butch Cassidy was a real man who was imprisoned and I think had like a bounty and was most wanted kind of in America for stealing things. So she takes that person, did some research on his life and his upbringing, and then basically turns it on its head as if he decided to become a good person. Like, he was misunderstood and he made some bad choices in life, but now he wants to be a good guy, and so he ends up taking care of being a bodyguard for a famous singer and her son, and ends up falling in love with them. And it's like a found family story at the heart of it. It wasn't a bad read at all, but unfortunately I had a really hard time connecting with these main characters. I just didn't really like root or care for them, especially the main female character was so flat for me, and I had zero care about her. Like, she just felt like some weird, just stern, closed off woman with no emotions. I really liked the young boy in here, like a 11-year-old boy. I think that was written really well. And Butch Cassidy was an interesting main male character, and I liked some of his inner thought work that was explored in this book, but overall it was kind of a letdown. So those were some historical I read. Moving on to another Amy Harmon, but this time a contemporary book. Like I said, I'm determined to read a lot of her backlist, and I picked up The Law of Moses. This is one of her older backlist books that I don't like the covers of, and I don't love contemporary books, so, you know, I was iffy about it. And unfortunately this one I did not like. I actually gave it 2 stars. I would say this is the first book by her that I actively disliked. This was just a weird one. It's mainly a love story between a guy named Moses who was a crack baby. Like, his mom was a drug addict and had him, and he was basically born an orphan, lived with his grandmother. Everyone in the town thinks he's weird and avoids him, but this one girl ends up befriending him, and then they end up falling in love. And there is a magical realism aspect of the book. Moses, the main male character, sees dead people, sees ghosts, like straight up talking to him and telling him things, and he paints it. Like, he goes into this like feverish painting state and like paints things on the walls, which I thought was super weird. I was just like, what the heck, this is dumb. This book was also quite dramatic. There's a bit of a mystery element to it, like people keep going missing and who's behind it. Everyone thinks it's Moses, but is it really? It was just such a letdown, and definitely a book I would not recommend. I don't really understand the people that gave it a high rating that I saw on Goodreads that have read other Amy Harmon books. But yeah, this one was just a big miss for me, unfortunately. I mean, Amy Harmon still has more positives than negatives in my books in terms of the books that I have read from her, but I'm a little worried about diving into more of her backlist if I do want to read her to zero that my experience will be similar to this one book that I read, so we'll see how that goes. Next up, a bit of a whim, I picked up Snow in April by Rosamund Pilcher. I picked Winter Solstice up by this author in January and really enjoyed my time with that one, and so I was very interested to read more of her books. Didn't really know where to start, and then I saw Chantel mention this book. I think she found it in a little free library and thought about reading it in April, and I was like, huh, never even heard of that one, and I thought the cover was kind of cute. So I checked it out from the library and I listened to the audiobook. It's a very short, like 4 or 5 hour audiobook. I enjoyed this one. I think this is like a 3.5. I will say the bones of this book are basically Winter Solstice. Like, I felt like this was a first draft version of what Winter Solstice was. Very similar plot points. We got people running away to a Scottish countryside estate and a bit of a found family aspect. You got older and younger people mixed together, people taking care of a young child, and then this like unlikely random romance. We got a bit of a snowstorm, so it had like a very wintry feel. We got people grieving and reeling from past events and that impacting their life. This was a very like slice of life character driven story. It had good bones, but like I said, very similar plot beats to Winter Solstice, just really short. Basically same kind of book though. So I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it because I was like, oh, this is just like kind of rereading the same thing. And next I picked up After the Flood by Cassandra Montag. This is a post-apocalyptic climate fiction story. We have this like not fully explained events of how the world came to be, but in this book there was a really huge flood and basically everyone's on boats these days and there's very little like land left. There's little harbors and ports that people trade goods at, but in general most of North America, specifically in this book, is just water. And the main character in this book is a mom. Her and her daughter are on a boat trying to survive, and there's also a found family aspect to the book. They find random people, they get on this shipping vessel, and there's a mission to get to Greenland because there is a colony there. So this one, the theme continues, was also like a 2.5 or 3-star read. I was kind of teetering between a 2 and a 3. I was disappointed by it because I don't feel like enough happened, and there was also exciting plot points introduced and then no follow through. Like a big event would happen or a big reveal or something would happen between the characters and then it would just end the chapter because ooh, cliffhanger, and then the next chapter just kind of was not addressed. People just moved on, and it was really strange that that happened multiple times, that I was like, that's weird. Like that was a really big deal, and then the author just kind of ignored it. And overall I just felt a little bit underwhelmed. I will say this is a book I would recommend for people that really like a character driven book. It's very character focused and felt very lyrical. There was a lot of metaphor and similes and analogies and feelings that this mother would have, and the author would just go into description of what it would be like. A lot of very pretty nature writing, which for some would like really draw them in. For some reason it took me out of the story a little bit because I think I wanted something different out of this book. I think this is one of the most beautiful covers that I own though. You could tell there with the light. It has like gold foiling. And I think for people that really like lyrical, character-driven, post-apocalyptic fiction, I would recommend if those are some buzzwords for you, if that sounds interesting. But yeah, for me, another middle-of-the-road book, as most of the ones were this month. Now, really quick to wrap it up, hopefully briefly, I picked up on a whim at work. I was working a shift, it was very slow, and I wandered to the graphic novel section on occasion on a really slow work shift at the library, and I picked up PicMonkey, Victory for Ukraine. This is a Ukrainian graphic novel because I have Slavic heritage, and so I was like, I want to read more about Ukraine. This is very much not my kind of art style when it comes to graphic novels. It felt like, you know, comic graphic novel. It was a bit random. It was like 6 short stories by different artists. None of it was really true. It was kind of like fantastical war comic strips of events that have happened in the most recent Ukrainian-Russia war. So everything that's kind of happened in the last 2 years, some stories of that were depicted in here. And I would say that it wasn't very well done. This is kind of like a book to raise money for the war effort, I believe, which is great. Like, I think it's great that this book exists, but as far as a graphic novel that really gripped me, that I like the art style and the story, yeah, it was a miss on all of those counts. So I wouldn't recommend, really, if you're looking for more Ukrainian kind of stories or fiction on what's going on with the war, this isn't really one of those, unfortunately. I then tried to participate in Picture This, which is a picture book readathon in April, and I did read a few books. I didn't get to as many as I had checked out from the library just because, I don't know, I read board books to my son. I don't really read picture books very often, and I don't have time to like sit down with a book these days. But I picked up a couple from the main hosts. So Shelley Swearingen talked about this book, Joy, which is about a little kitten playing, and it was super cute, very simple to read. There's just like a cute little kitten playing, and I thought this was super cute and fun. And then from a recommendation from Jack, from Spread Book Joy. I picked up What Do You See When You Look at a Tree? This is a beautiful picture book that has some lovely artwork about trees and how trees change and how trees grow and talk to each other. I really like that too. If it's not obvious, I don't really participate in any of the prompts that were given, but I did just pick up 4 picture books. The third one I picked up was The Tower of Life, How Yafa Eliak Rebuilt Her Town in Stories and Photographs. This is a true story, nonfiction picture book about Yafa, who was a Jewish girl in a small Jewish town that was decimated during the Second World War, and she is the person that put together a display in the Washington DC Holocaust Memorial by collecting photographs from people from the small Jewish town. So she kind of went into history and like made an effort to put together the story. I thought this was a beautiful picture book. I loved the illustration style. It's almost like this scratchy, charcoaly, bold colors, high contrast. I really enjoyed the art style in here a ton. And I thought this was a very sweet story, a great nonfiction picture book, would highly recommend. And then I picked up The Feather by Margaret Wilde and Freya Blackwood. I was drawn to this cover, and this was also shortlisted for Children's Book of the Year in Australia. This was a magical realism book about a magical feather that lands in a town, and these 2 kids see the magic in it, and it kind of was told in poetry, like in verse. I really like the art style. It's also very like scratchy pen, pencil, charcoal drawing, very gray, muted tones in the whole book. But I thought the illustration was beautiful. And the story was okay. So yeah, just a few fun little picture books I found along the way. And that wraps up my April reading. Unfortunately, no new favorites, no new standouts. Hope you all are doing well. And thanks for watching and tuning in today. And I will see you guys in some more book videos soon. Bye.